The transport ship broke atmosphere over Talon 4 36 hours before the Krell swarm's projected arrival. Below, the capital city of Harvest Point was in chaos as millions of civilians scrambled to reach evacuation transports. Inside the dropship's cargo bay, Phantom Unit conducted final equipment checks in practiced silence. Each operator carried enough gear to fight for 72 hours without resupply, plus specialized equipment for their role. Deho reviewed the tactical map one more time. Harvest Point sat in a natural valley surrounded by ridgelines. The main evacuation center was a massive spaceport capable of handling 50 transport ships simultaneously. Every civilian on Talon 4 was being funneled through that single point. "Landing zone is hot," the pilot called back. "Civilian traffic everywhere. Best I can do is put you down 3 kilometers from the spaceport." "That works," Deho confirmed. "Keep your engines warm. When the swarm arrives, you leave immediately. No heroic rescue attempts. Copy that. You operators are crazy, you know that?" Bora grinned. "We get that a lot." The dropship landed in an empty plaza. Phantom Unit deployed in 2 fire teams, moving quickly away from the transport as it lifted off. Around them, Talon civilians hurried past carrying belongings, children, and whatever they could not bear to leave behind. Most of them were humanoid, with blue-gray skin and large eyes. They looked at the 8 humans with confusion and fear. A local security officer approached, his translator crackling. "You are the human military? We were told soldiers were coming." "We're here," Deho said simply. "Where's your command center?" "There." The officer pointed to a squat building near the spaceport. "But only 8 of you? The Krell swarm has millions of bioforms. How can 8 soldiers help?" Hiyori smiled tightly. "You'd be surprised what 8 humans can do." The command center was packed with local officials coordinating the evacuation. They looked up hopefully when Phantom Unit entered, then looked confused at the small number. "I am Administrator Kelvin," said an older Talon with elaborate facial markings. "You are the Council's military response." "We're the delaying force," Deho corrected. "Our mission is to slow the swarm long enough for you to complete evacuation." "How long do you need?" "At current rates, 48 hours minimum. But the swarm arrives in 36. "Then we need to buy you 12 extra hours," Deho said calmly, as if this was a routine problem. "Show me your defensive positions." Kelvin pulled up a holographic map. "We have security forces at these checkpoints, but they are meant for crowd control, not combat. We have no military presence. The Council said the swarm could not be fought." Taiwan studied the map, his analytical mind already working. "The swarm will come from the north. These ridgelines will funnel them toward the valley. They'll push straight for the spaceport because that's where the concentration of life signs is highest." "Can you stop them?" Kelvin asked desperately. "No," Minho said bluntly, "but we can make them wish they'd gone somewhere else." Phantom Unit split up, each fire team taking different sectors. Deho's team Alpha Cell included Hiyori, Minho, and Taiwan. Bora led Bravo Cell with Jisoo, Subin, and Yuna. They had 36 hours to prepare a battlefield. The work began immediately. Bora's demolitions expertise transformed the valley approaches into a maze of hidden explosives and obstacles. She did not just plant bombs, she engineered kill zones, creating terrain that would channel the swarm into predictable paths. "The Krell adapt," she explained to a watching Talon engineer. "But they're still physical beings. They have to move through space. We're making sure the spaces they move through are exactly where we want them." Minho established sniper positions on the ridgelines, calculating angles and ranges with the precision of a mathematician. Each position had multiple fallback points and clear escape routes. He would not be caught in one spot when the swarm adapted to his attacks. Subin set up her communications and electronic warfare suite. "The Krell coordinate through pheromones and electromagnetic signals," she said, configuring her equipment. "We can't block it entirely, but we can add noise to their network, make their coordination just a little bit slower." Jisoo established a field hospital, but it was clear from her equipment that her role went beyond medical care. She carried weapons, combat stims, and analysis tools for studying enemy biology in real time. Yuna positioned heavy weapons at strategic points. Each emplacement was designed for rapid displacement. Fire, move, fire again from a new position. Never stay still long enough for the swarm to adapt. But the most interesting work was being done by Taiwan and Hiyori. They studied every record of Krell behavior, building a psychological profile of the hive mind. "They're efficient," Taiwan explained to Deho as they worked. "Almost perfectly efficient. They don't waste resources on unnecessary actions. They identify the objective and move toward it with optimal routing. Which makes them predictable, Yuri added. They'll see the spaceport, calculate the optimal approach, and execute it. We just need to make sure their optimal approach leads them exactly where we want. Into the kill zones, Deho confirmed. As the hours counted down, the civilian evacuation continued. Transport ships landed, loaded refugees, and launched in a constant stream. Every hour, thousands more people escaped. But millions remained. 24 hours before the swarm's arrival, Administrator Kelvin approached Deho. Captain, our sensors are detecting the Krell advance elements. They're moving faster than projected. How much faster? They'll be here in 12 hours, not 36. Deho did not curse or panic. He simply activated his comm. All units, timeline just compressed. Swarm arrives in 12 hours. Final prep phase begins now. Phantom unit shifted into high gear. There was no rush, no frantic scrambling. Just smooth, professional efficiency as 8 operators completed in hours what should have taken days. By the time the sun set on Talon 4, the valley around Harvest Point had been transformed. To the evacuating civilians, it looked empty. To anyone with military training, it was a masterpiece of defensive engineering. The 8 humans gathered at the command center for a final briefing. Deho looked at each of his team members. They were tired but focused, ready for what was coming. The swarm will hit us in 8 hours, he said. Our mission has not changed. Hold long enough for the evacuation to complete. Administrator Kelvin says they need 40 hours total. We bought them 28. We need 12 more. 12 hours against the Krell swarm, Yuna said thoughtfully. That's going to be interesting. The Krell have never fought humans, Deho continued. They've adapted to counter-council tactics, but they don't know ours. We use that advantage as long as we can. When they adapt to one approach, we shift to another. Stay unpredictable. Stay flexible. And if we can't hold? Jisoo asked. Then we delay them long enough for the last transports to leave and we extract on the final ship, Deho said. But I think we can hold. They're going to underestimate us. Every species does. Minho checked his rifle one last time. They'll learn. Too late, Bora agreed with a dark smile. As night fell over Talon 4, Phantom Unit moved to their initial positions. The spaceport below continued its frantic evacuation, lights blazing against the darkness. On the northern ridgeline, sensors detected the first signs of the swarm's approach. Deho lay in his position overlooking the valley, night vision active, watching and waiting. Beside him, Hayori and Taewon did the same. 3 kilometers away, Minho settled into his primary sniper nest, breathing slowly and evenly. The Krell swarm was coming. They had consumed 17 civilizations and never been stopped. They adapted to every threat and overwhelmed every defense. But they had never fought humans from a death world. They had never encountered warriors who spent millions of years learning to hunt, to adapt, to survive against impossible odds. They were about to learn. Deho's comm crackled softly. All units report status. One by one, his team checked in. 8 voices, calm and professional, ready for battle. Position set, Deho confirmed. Weapons tight until I give the word. Let them come in close. Let them think this will be easy. On the northern horizon, something moved in the darkness. Thousands of somethings. The Krell swarm had arrived. Administrator Kelvin's voice came through on the command channel, tight with fear. Captain Kwan, sensors show over 2 million bioforms approaching your position. Please tell me you have reinforcements coming. Deho watched the approaching swarm through his scope, calculating ranges and timing. Negative, Administrator. Just 8 humans, and how can 8 soldiers stop 2 million? Hyori's voice cut in, cold and confident. They're about to find out why Earth is called a death world. The swarm flowed down from the ridgelines like a living tide, countless bioforms moving with perfect coordination, heading straight for the valley and the millions of civilians beyond. In the darkness, 8 humans waited. They did not pray. They did not doubt. They simply prepared to show the galaxy what humanity's elite forces could do. The battle for Talon 4 was about to begin. The emergency council session began 2 hours after the Krell alert. The main display showed 3 planets, all marked with red icons indicating complete loss of contact. Talon 4, Varesh, and Koram 7. 3 worlds, millions of inhabitants, gone silent within a single planetary rotation. Counselor Miraton floated at the center of the chamber, her normally blue bioluminescence flickering with distressed purple patterns. Our deep space sensors confirm the Krell swarm has entered the outer territories. Current projections show them moving toward the Talon system. Talon 4 has a population of 4 million civilians. An older Hivani named Torvax brought up historical data. The Krell swarm has consumed 17 civilizations in the past 2,000 years. They have never been defeated. They have never been slowed. They have never even been meaningfully resisted. Standard protocol is complete evacuation of any system in their path. Daiho sat quietly in the human delegation area, flanked by Hayori and Bora. He was reading through data files on his portable terminal, his expression thoughtful. "We have 72 hours before the swarm reaches Talon 4, Miraton continued. "All available transport vessels are being redirected for evacuation. Fleet Command estimates we can save approximately 60% of the population if we begin immediately." 60%, Velthar repeated. "That means abandoning 1.6 million people." "We have no choice," Torvax said firmly. "The Krell cannot be fought. Every species that has tried has been consumed. They are a hive mind controlling billions of bioforms. They adapt to any threat in real time. They feel no fear, no hesitation, and no mercy. Evacuation is the only rational response." Daiho looked up from his terminal. "Has anyone actually tried fighting them properly?" The chamber went quiet. Several aliens turned to stare at the human captain. Torvax's scales flashed with irritation. "Captain Quan, did you not hear what I said? The Krell swarm has destroyed 17 civilizations, civilizations that had thousands of years more military experience than humanity." "I heard you," Daiho replied calmly. "But that doesn't answer my question. Did those civilizations actually fight, or did they just evacuate and hope the swarm moved on?" "They fought," Velthar insisted. "The Vral Dominion engaged the swarm 4 centuries ago. We lost 12,000 ships and gained nothing. The swarm adapts too quickly. Whatever tactics you use, they counter within hours. Whatever weapons you deploy, they evolve resistances. Fighting them is suicide." Hayori leaned forward. "Counselor, can we access the tactical records from those engagements?" Miraton hesitated, then transmitted the files. "These are from multiple species across different time periods. They all show the same pattern." For several minutes, the 3 humans reviewed the data in silence. Bora occasionally made notes. Hayori cross-referenced something on her own device. Daiho just read, his expression giving away nothing. Finally, he looked up. "These civilizations all use the same basic approach. They established defensive lines, relied on superior firepower, and expected the swarm to break against their formations. That is standard military doctrine," Torvax objected. "For fighting conventional forces, yes," Daiho agreed. "But the Krell aren't conventional. They're a hive mind with instantaneous communication and adaptation. Using predictable tactics against them is asking to lose." "And you think humanity can do better?" Velthar asked, skepticism clear in his tone. "I think humanity approaches warfare differently," Daiho said. "We don't rely on rigid doctrine. We adapt. We improvise. We change tactics mid-battle based on what's working and what isn't. And we've been fighting hive-minded organisms since before we left Earth." "What do you mean?" Miraton asked. Bora smiled slightly. "Ants, counselor, termites, bees. Earth has dozens of hive-minded insect species. Humans have been dealing with coordinated swarm behavior for thousands of years. We know how they think. More importantly, we know how to disrupt them. The Krell swarm is not insects," Torvax said dismissively. "No," Hayori agreed. "But the principles are similar. Hive minds are extremely efficient but also predictable. They optimize for coordination, which means they follow patterns. Patterns can be exploited." At that moment, the door opened again. 3 more humans entered, followed by 2 more. Captain Minho Park, tall and lean with the patient stillness of a sniper. Lieutenant Jisoo Lee carrying medical gear but moving like a soldier. Sergeant Taewon Song, smaller than the others but with eyes that analyzed everything. Then came Subin An and Unico, both wearing the same unmarked black uniforms as the rest of Phantom Unit. The rest of our team, Deho said by way of introduction. We operate in 2 4-person cells for most missions. This situation might require full deployment. Court stared at the 8 humans now assembled in the chamber. You think 8 operators can fight the Krell swarm? A swarm that fields millions of bioforms? Not fight, Minho said quietly. Delay. Buy time for the evacuation. That's still suicide, Velthar protested. Maybe, Deho admitted. Or maybe the Krell have never faced humans before and don't know what they're dealing with. Taewan stepped forward, carrying a data pad. I've been analyzing the historical records. The Krell swarm shows consistent behavioral patterns. They rely on overwhelming numbers and rapid adaptation. But there's something interesting in the data. Every species they've fought has used large formations, coordinated fleet actions, and defensive positions. They've optimized their tactics to counter exactly that kind of warfare. And, Miraton prompted. And humans don't fight that way, Taewan continued. Small unit tactics, decentralized command, individual initiative within a coordinated plan. The swarm's adaptation protocols are designed to counter formations and doctrine. They're not designed to counter 8 independent operators who can change tactics every few minutes. Torvak shook his head. You're suggesting that 8 humans can accomplish what entire fleets could not? We're suggesting that 8 humans using unconventional tactics might buy enough time to complete the evacuation, Jisoo corrected. That's the mission. Get civilians out. Everything else is secondary. Deho stood, addressing Miraton directly. Counselor, we're requesting autonomous operational authority. Deploy us to Talon 4 before the swarm arrives. Let us establish defensive positions and engage on our terms. If we fail, you've lost 8 soldiers and the evacuation continues. If we succeed, you save more lives. And if you're captured? Miraton asked. The Krell swarm consumes and incorporates biological material. They could adapt to human biology. They won't capture us, Hiyori said flatly. That's not how we operate. The room fell silent at the implication. These humans would rather die than be taken by the swarm. Belthar studied the 8 humans. There was something about them that was different from the regular soldiers he had faced on New Busan. Those soldiers had been dangerous, yes, but still recognizable as conventional military. These 8 operators had a different quality. They moved with absolute confidence, spoke with complete certainty, and showed no trace of fear when discussing a threat that terrified the entire galaxy. You truly believe you can hold against the swarm? He asked Deho. I believe we can make them regret entering this system, Deho replied. The Krell swarm has never fought humans before. They've adapted to counter every tactic the Council species use. But they don't know our tactics. They don't know our capabilities. And by the time they figure it out, he smiled without humor. It'll be too late. Miraton pulsed with indecision. The logical choice was to reject this insane proposal and focus on evacuation, but something about these humans made her hesitate. They were not boasting or showing off. They were simply stating what they believed to be facts. The Council will need to vote, she began. With respect, Counselor, we don't have time for votes, Deho interrupted. The swarm will be in system in 68 hours. We need 48 hours minimum to prepare the battlefield. That gives you 20 hours to evacuate civilians while we hold the line. You mean while you die? Torvak said harshly. Subin spoke, for the first time, her voice carrying an edge of dark humor. Dying is easy, Counselor. We plan to make the Krell do that part. Miraton looked at the 8 humans, then at the display showing Talon 4 and its millions of civilians. She made her decision. You have your authorization, Captain Kwan. Full operational autonomy. But understand this. If you fail, the galaxy will remember 8 humans who died trying to stop the unstoppable. Deho nodded. And if we succeed, the galaxy will learn what happens when the Krell swarm meets Earth's elite. Phantom Unit filed out of the chamber. The assembled aliens watched them go in silence. Velthar turned to Miraton. You sent 8 humans to fight the Krell swarm. I did. They are going to die. Miraton pulsed with uncertain blue light. Perhaps. Or perhaps we are about to learn why humanity's regular troops were so terrifying. If those were their standard soldiers, what can their elite forces do? No one had an answer. They would find out soon enough. The conference room on Harmony 7 Station was designed to hold representatives from 40 different species. Today it felt too small. Ambassador Velthar of the Vral Dominion stood at the central podium, his forearms gesturing with barely controlled anger. "The humans are out of control," he declared, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into galactic standard. 3 months ago, they destroyed an entire Vral battle legion on New Busan. A full legion. 10,000 of our finest warriors gone in 2 planetary rotations, the assembled aliens murmured among themselves. The Vral were known across the galaxy as one of the most formidable military powers. Their warrior caste trained from birth. Their battle tactics had conquered 40 systems. Hearing that humans had crushed them so easily was disturbing. Counselor Miratan, a floating jellyfish-like creature from the oceanic world of Tethys, pulsed with orange light. "Ambassador, your report says you invaded their colony world." The humans were defending their territory. Defending? Velthar's mandibles clicked in frustration. They did not simply defend. They hunted us. Our warriors reported that human soldiers moved through our positions like ghosts. They set traps that should have been impossible to conceal. They attacked from angles our tactical computers said were impossible. And when we finally cornered a group of them, he paused, something like fear flickering across his alien features. They did not retreat. They advanced. 20 human soldiers charged into 200 Vral warriors and won. The room fell silent. This was not the first such report. In the 15 years since humanity had joined the galactic community, their military had gained a reputation that made older species uncomfortable. Humans were not the strongest species or the fastest or the most technologically advanced, but they were dangerous in ways the galaxy had never encountered. "Perhaps," suggested Diplomat Court of the Hivani Collective, "we should discuss military conduct protocols with humanity. Set some boundaries on acceptable combat behavior." Velthar's laugh was bitter. "You think they will listen? These humans come from a death world. Do you know what that means? Their planet tried to kill them for millions of years. Everything on Earth evolved to hunt, to survive, to kill. The humans are not the strongest species on their own world. Yet they conquered it anyway. They are persistence hunters, Court. They do not stop. They do not give up. They adapt faster than our computers can calculate." At that moment, the chamber doors opened. 3 humans walked in and the room went quiet. Captain Deho Kwan entered first. He was not particularly tall by human standards, maybe average height, with dark hair and calm eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore a simple black uniform with minimal decoration, no weapons visible, but something about the way he moved made predator instincts flare in species that still had them. Behind him came Lieutenant Hayori Nam, smaller than Deho, with sharp features and an expression that gave away nothing. Her movements were fluid, economical, like every step was planned 3 steps ahead. The third human was Sergeant Bora Choi, stockier and broader than the other 2, with scarred hands and the kind of alertness that suggested she could take apart the room and everyone in it if necessary. They moved to the human delegation area with perfect coordination, not marching in formation but somehow synchronized anyway. It was unsettling to watch. Ambassador Velthar stared at them. "Who are these humans?" "We requested a diplomatic delegation." Counselor Miratan checked her datapad, her tentacles curling in what might have been concern. "According to Earth's transmission, these 3 are representatives of humanity's special operations community. Captain Kwan commands something called Phantom Unit. Special operations." Velthar's translator struggled with the human military terminology. "You mean they are soldiers?" Deho smiled politely. It was not a comforting expression. "We prefer the term operators, Ambassador. And yes, we're here to discuss the concerns about human military conduct. This is unacceptable." Velthar's forearms waved in agitation. "We request diplomats and Earth sends more warriors?" "With respect," Hayori said, her voice calm and professional, "you're complaining about human military behavior. We thought you might want to speak with actual military personnel instead of diplomats who have never held a rifle." Court leaned forward, his curiosity overcoming diplomatic caution. "Captain Kwan, the soldiers who defeated the Vral on New Busan, what unit were they from?" "The 5th Marine Division," Deho replied. "Good soldiers. Solid training. Standard infantry deployment." The word standard hung in the air like a bomb. "Standard?" Velthar repeated slowly. "Those were your regular troops?" Yes, Ambassador. The 5th Marines are a line infantry unit. They handle colony defense, patrol duty, routine deployments. Standard stuff, Bora added helpfully. They're not even considered elite by our standards. Just competent, well-trained soldiers doing their job. The implications of this statement rippled through the chamber. If standard human infantry could destroy a Vral battle legion, what could their actual elite forces do? Miraton pulsed yellow with concern. Captain Quan, if those were your regular troops, what exactly is Phantom Unit? Deho exchanged glances with Hayori and Bora. We handle situations that require a more specialized approach. Hostage rescue, direct action against high-value targets, reconnaissance in contested space, that sort of thing. How specialized? Court-pressed, put it this way, Hayori said. To join a standard infantry unit, you need to meet basic physical and mental requirements and complete training. To join Marine Recon or Army Rangers, you need to be in the top 10% and survive additional selection. To even be considered for Phantom Unit, she paused. Let's just say the selection process has a 98% failure rate. The room was very quiet now. Aliens who had been so confident about confronting humanity about their military conduct were now calculating just how badly they had misunderstood the situation. Velthar's voice was careful now, his anger replaced by something else. Captain, how many operators like you does Earth have? That's classified, Deho said pleasantly. But I can tell you that Phantom Unit is not unique. Different branches have different special operations groups. Navy has SEAL teams. Air Force has special tactics. We all handle different mission profiles. And you sent 3 of these elite operators to our diplomatic meeting, Miraton observed. Is that meant as a threat? Not at all, Counselor, Deho assured her. Earth's government thought it would be useful for the Council to understand the distinction between our regular military and our specialized units. No threats implied, but everyone in the room understood the unspoken message. If the galaxy was concerned about human regular troops, they should probably be very careful about creating situations that would require humanity's elite forces. Bora checked her data pad and frowned. Captain, we're receiving a priority alert. The atmosphere shifted as all 3 humans went from relaxed to focused in an instant. Deho read the message, his expression hardening. Counselor Miraton, we may have a bigger problem than military conduct protocols. What kind of problem? She asked. The kind that requires soldiers, not diplomats, Deho said. The Krell swarm just entered council space. The chamber erupted into chaos. The Krell swarm was a name that made civilizations evacuate entire sectors. No one fought the Krell. You ran and you hoped they lost interest. Through the noise, Deho's calm voice cut clearly. With your permission, Counselor, I'd like to request deployment authorization for Phantom Unit. Velthar stared at the human captain. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity's elite forces could actually do. He was not sure he wanted to watch, but he knew he would not be able to look away. The first Krell bioforms entered the valley at Oro 347 hours local time. They moved in perfect silence. Thousands of creatures ranging from small scout forms the size of dogs to massive warrior variants as large as ground vehicles. All of them were connected to the hive mind. All of them coordinated with mathematical precision. The swarm had analyzed the valley, calculated the optimal approach to the spaceport, and committed its forces accordingly. It had fought 17 civilizations and learned to counter every conventional military response. It expected static defenses, massed firepower, and predictable tactics. It got Deho instead. Hold, he whispered into his comm, as the leading edge of the swarm flowed past the first hidden positions. Let them commit. Through his night vision scope, Deho watched as more bioforms entered the kill zone. 10,000. 20,000? 50,000. The swarm was not cautious. It had never needed to be. Beside him, Hayori counted softly. 70,000 in the valley. 60,000 more on approach. Good density, Taewon murmured, analyzing the formation. They're bunched up to maximize speed. Classic Krell efficiency. When the swarm's main force reached the center of the valley, Deho gave the order. Bora, light them up. 3 kilometers away, Sergeant Bora Choi pressed a detonator. The valley floor erupted. Charges that had been planted in sequence created a rolling wave of explosions that tore through the swarm's densest formations. But these were not simple bombs. Bora had engineered shaped charges that channeled force horizontally. creating overlapping kill zones that shredded bioforms by the hundreds. The Krell swarm had never experienced this. Previous enemies had tried to blow them up, yes, but always with predictable minefields or artillery. This was surgical, targeted, and timed to catch the maximum number of bioforms in the open. Before the smoke cleared, Minho fired his first shot. 4 kilometers away, a large coordinator bioform's head exploded. The hive mind registered the loss and immediately began analyzing the threat vector. Before it could complete the calculation, Minho had changed positions and fired from a completely different angle, eliminating another coordinator. Scratched 2 command nodes, Minho reported calmly. The swarm adapted, spawning armor-plated bioforms and dispersing its formation, but Yuna was ready. Her heavy plasma cannon opened up from an unexpected flank. The superheated bolts designed not for maximum killing power, but for creating barriers of fire that channeled the swarm into narrower approaches. Funneling them to Sector 3, Yuna confirmed. In Sector 3, Hiyori waited. She was not in a defensive position. She was in the open, standing on an elevated platform that gave her clear sight lines in all directions. As the swarm's attention focused on her obvious position, she opened fire with methodical precision. The Krell immediately recognized the threat and diverted thousands of bioforms to overwhelm her. They expected her to retreat, to fall back to cover. That was what every other species did. Hiyori charged forward instead. She moved through the oncoming bioforms like water through cracks. Her combat style, something no council species had ever developed. Close quarters, fast transitions, constantly moving so the swarm's ranged adaptations were useless. When they spawned melee variants to counter her, she had already shifted to ranged attacks from a new position. They're adapting to her, Taewon observed, watching the hive mind's response. Spawning faster melee bioforms. Good, Daeho said. That means they're committing resources to counter one operator. Subin, how's our noise working? At her electronic warfare station, Subin smiled at her screens. Their coordination is degrading by 3%. Not much, but enough to slow their adaptation cycle. They're getting our fake signals mixed in with their real ones. Keep it up. The battle continued with controlled chaos. Every time the swarm adapted to one threat, Phantom units shifted tactics. Minho's sniper fire forced them to develop armored scouts, so he switched to targeting leg joints, making them develop different armor patterns which slowed them down. When they spawned faster bioforms to counter his attacks, Bora had rigged secondary charges that only triggered when the faster variants moved over them. They're learning, Jisoo reported from her position. She was not treating wounded. She was studying dead Krell bioforms, analyzing their biology in real time. Neural adaptation taking approximately 6 minutes per major change. Physiological changes taking 20 to 30 minutes. Humans adapt in seconds, Daeho said. We stay inside their cycle. And they did. Every 6 minutes, Phantom unit changed something. Firing positions, weapons, tactics, target priority. The swarm's hive mind was incredibly efficient at adaptation, but it needed time to analyze, decide, and implement. Humans did not need time. They just needed training and experience. 2 hours into the battle, the swarm had lost 30,000 bioforms and had not advanced more than a kilometer. This should have been impossible. The hive mind ran calculations and determined that it needed to commit more forces. 100,000 more bioforms poured into the valley. Contact multiplying, Taewon reported. They're getting frustrated. Committing reserves to overwhelm us. Let them come, Daeho said. Bora, second wave traps? Armed and ready, Captain. The fresh swarm forces pushed hard, trying to use pure numbers to break through. They spread out to counter the explosives, moved faster to counter the sniping, developed pack tactics to counter isolated operators. Phantom unit countered by doing something completely unexpected. They stopped retreating and started advancing. Hiyori and Daeho moved forward together, not as a formation but as 2 independent operators who happened to be going the same direction. The swarm tried to surround them, but every time bioforms closed in, the humans had already moved to a position that turned the encirclement into a kill zone. Civilians need another 6 hours, Administrator Kelvin reported from the spaceport. Can you hold? We're fine, Daeho replied, shooting a charging bioform without looking, his peripheral vision and threat assessment running on automatic. Just keep loading those transports, but the swarm was learning. After 4 hours of continuous combat, It had analyzed enough human tactics to begin effective counters. It spawned bioforms with redundant neural systems to resist Subin's electronic warfare. It developed thick armor that could withstand Minho's rifle. It created acid-spitting variants to counter Bora's explosives. "They're getting smarter," Minho observed, putting a round through a bioform's secondary brain after the first shot only wounded it. "Adaptation accelerating. Then we adapt faster," Deho said. "Shift to Protocol Gamma. Yuna Jisoo, you're up." The two women moved to forward positions with equipment they had not used yet. Jisoo deployed bioweapon canisters that released modified fungal spores. The Krell bioforms breathed them in and started experiencing neural disruption. Not lethal, but confusing. The hive mind's coordination stuttered as infected. Bioforms sent corrupted data into the network. Yuna switched from her plasma cannon to experimental sonic weapons that targeted the Krell's communication frequencies. The hive mind could not stop its bioforms from receiving the signals, which meant it could not stop the disruption. "Beautiful," Subin said, watching her screens. Their network efficiency just dropped to 82%. "They're starting to make mistakes." And the swarm did make mistakes. Small ones at first. Bioforms moving slightly out of coordination. Attacking positions that had already been abandoned. Failing to support each other with perfect timing. Human operators exploited every single mistake instantly. 6 hours into the battle, the sun rose over Talon 4. In the growing light, the valley was a graveyard of Krell bioforms. Hundreds of thousands of bodies, testament to what 8 humans could accomplish. But the swarm kept coming. It had millions more bioforms. It could afford losses that would break any other military force. Phantom Unit, on the other hand, had taken 0 casualties. They were tired, running low on ammunition and dealing with equipment stress, but every single operator was still combat effective. 2 hours left, Calvin reported. "Last transports are loading now. We will make it because of you." Deho checked his team's status. Everyone was still operational, but they were hitting their limits. Minho was down to his last 100 rounds. Bora had exhausted her primary explosives. Yuna's heavy weapons were overheating. "One final push," he said to his team. "We hold for 2 more hours, then we extract. They've learned too much about our tactics. Time to show them one more trick." "What trick?" Hori asked, eliminating a bioform that got too close. "The one where 8 humans decide they're tired of being defensive," Deho said. "All units collapse to Rally Point Alpha. We're going on offense." The Krell hive mind monitoring the battlefield registered this as a retreat. It committed its remaining forces to a final push, determined to overrun the humans before they could escape, which was exactly what Deho wanted. As the swarm surged forward, all 8 members of Phantom Unit converged on a single position. They were not running. They were concentrating their firepower in one location, turning 8 independent threats into one overwhelming force. The swarm tried to surround them. Instead, it got shredded by coordinated fields of fire. The hive mind tried to adapt, but 8 humans working together presented 8 times as many variables. The adaptation cycle, already struggling, broke down completely. For 30 minutes, Phantom Unit held a position that should have been overrun in there. The extraction should have been the end of it. Phantom Unit had accomplished their mission. 4 million civilians were safely evacuated from Talon 4. The team was being pulled back to regroup and rearm. Standard operating procedure. Deho looked at his exhausted team in the dropship and made a decision that went against every regulation in the book. "Pilot, hold position at orbital insertion point." The pilot's voice crackled with confusion. "Sir, our orders are to return to Harmony 7 station." "Orders changed. Hold position." In the passenger bay, 7 other operators looked at their captain. They were tired. Their equipment was damaged and they were nearly out of ammunition. But they knew that look on Deho's face. "You want to go back," Hori said. It was not a question. "The swarm is still on Talon 4, Deho replied. "We hurt them, but they'll adapt to everything we showed them. Next time they encounter humans, they'll be ready for our tactics." "So we teach them different tactics," Minho said, checking his remaining ammunition. 97 rounds. "Should be enough." Bora laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "My demolition supplies are gone, but I still have hands and a brain. I can improvise." Taewon was already pulling up sensor data on his tablet. "The swarm has pulled back from the valley. They're consolidating in the northern highlands, probably analyzing what went wrong. Standard Krell behavior after an unexpected defeat. They think we're done," Jisoo observed. They think they have time to adapt. They're wrong, Subin said, her fingers dancing over her electronic warfare controls. Captain, if we hit them now while they're in analysis mode, we can disrupt their adaptation cycle completely. Deho opened a comm channel to Administrator Kelvin. Administrator, this is Captain Quan. Request permission to continue operations on Talon 4. Kelvin's response was immediate and shocked. Captain, you just held off the Krell swarm for 8 hours. The evacuation is complete. You have done more than anyone thought possible. Come back. The swarm is still on your planet, Administrator. They'll strip it of resources and move on to the next target, unless we stop them. 8 humans cannot stop the Krell swarm. We just delayed 2 million bioforms, Deho countered. Let's see what we can do with time to plan. There was a long silence. Finally, Kelvin spoke again. The Council will never authorize this. What you are suggesting is suicide. The Council doesn't have to authorize it. I have autonomous operational authority. Administrator, I'm not asking permission. I'm informing you of our intentions. Another pause. Then Kelvin's voice came back, filled with something that might have been awe. You humans are insane. What do you need? Ammunition, supplies, fabrication equipment, and complete access to Talon 4's industrial facilities. You shall have it. Captain Quan, why are you doing this? Deho looked at his team. Because if we don't teach the Krell swarm to fear humanity now, they'll be back. And next time it might be Earth they target. The dropship descended again, this time landing at an abandoned industrial complex outside Harvest Point. The place had been evacuated with the rest of the planet, but the manufacturing equipment was still functional. 72 hours, Deho announced as they unloaded. The swarm will finish its analysis and push outward in 3 days. We use that time to prepare. Prepare for what? Yuna asked, though she was already smiling because she knew. For the swarm to learn that humans don't just defend, Deho said. We hunt. The next 3 days transformed the 8 operators into something beyond soldiers. They became a force that adapted faster than any hive mind could process. Bora spent 18 hours in the fabrication facility, creating improvised weapons from industrial materials, shaped charges from mining explosives, incendiary devices from chemical storage, barriers and traps from construction equipment. The swarm had learned to counter her military-grade explosives, but it had never seen what a creative human could do with civilian technology. Minho worked with what ammunition remained, hand-loading rounds with specialized payloads, armor-piercing for the heavy bioforms, fragmentary for groups, tracer rounds to mark targets for others. He was down to 97 bullets, but each one would count for 10. Jisoo raided the medical facilities, not for supplies but for biological materials. She synthesized compounds that would disrupt Krell neural chemistry, created aerosol dispersants that would spread through the hive mind's pheromone network, developed toxins that would not kill bioforms but make them unreliable. Subin commandeered the planet's communication infrastructure. She could not match the swarm's coordination, but she could flood their network with so much conflicting data that coordination became impossible. She learned to mimic Krell signals, sending false orders that bioforms could not distinguish from real ones. Taewon studied every second of combat footage, building a complete psychological profile of the hive mind. He found patterns in how it adapted, predictable responses to certain stimuli, ways to manipulate its decision-making process. Yuna and Hayori worked together on mobility solutions. The swarm had learned to counter static positions, so they built mobile platforms that could reposition in seconds, light vehicles modified with weapons mounts, exoskeleton frames that increased speed and carrying capacity, and Deho planned. He had fought the swarm for 8 hours and learned how it thought. Now he would use that knowledge to break it. On the 3rd day, Phantom Unit deployed into the Northern Highlands. The swarm detected them immediately and began mobilizing forces. The hive mind had adapted. It had studied human tactics and developed counters. It was ready. It was not ready enough. Minho's first shot came from a position the swarm's model said was impossible to fire from. The round was a custom load that penetrated armor the Krell had just evolved. By the time they adapted to the new ammunition type, Minho had already shifted to different rounds from a different position. Bora's improvised explosives did not behave like military ordnance. They were industrial accidents waiting to happen, and the swarm had no protocols for countering civilian technology, weaponized by someone who understood both chemistry and tactical necessity. The bioweapons Jisoo deployed were not designed to kill. They created confusion in the hive mind, bioforms receiving contradictory commands, neural pathways misfiring, coordination breaking down at the cellular level. Subin's electronic warfare evolved beyond jamming. She was now actively manipulating the swarm's communication network, sending signals that the hive mind trusted, but that led bioforms into traps, ambushes, and kill zones. But the real difference was tactical. Phantom Unit was not defending anymore. They were attacking, moving constantly, hitting the swarm from unexpected angles and disappearing before it could respond. The Krell hive mind, for the first time in its existence, felt something analogous to frustration. It had adapted to counter-human defensive tactics. These were not defensive tactics. The humans were not trying to hold ground or protect an objective. They were simply destroying bioforms as efficiently as possible, and then moving before the swarm could retaliate. Hour 12 of the renewed engagement, the swarm tried a new approach. It split into smaller groups, trying to use the humans' own dispersal tactics against them. Phantom Unit immediately concentrated, overwhelming the smaller swarm groups with focused firepower before they could coordinate. When the swarm adapted by maintaining larger formations, the humans dispersed again. "They're trying to predict us," Taewon observed, watching the swarm's movement patterns. "They think we follow patterns." "Humans don't follow patterns," Deho said. "We're pattern creators." "Minho, demonstrate." For the next 30 minutes, Minho fired from 12 different positions using 17 different tactics. The swarm tried to model his behavior and failed. There was no pattern because Minho was not following doctrine. He was improvising based on moment-to-moment conditions. Hour 24, the swarm pulled back. This was unprecedented. The Krell swarm had never retreated from a single planet before, let alone from 8 soldiers. "They're recalculating," Taewon said, analyzing the withdrawal. "They've lost over 1 million bioforms since we started this engagement. Their adaptation algorithms are overwhelmed. Press them," Deho ordered. "Don't let them consolidate," Phantom Unit pursued, which should have been suicide. Attacking a withdrawing swarm meant moving into potentially overwhelming numbers. But the 8 humans had learned something the swarm had not. In warfare, psychology mattered more than numbers. The swarm's withdrawal accelerated. Bioforms began moving toward the planet's northern pole, away from the humans. "They're evacuating," Yori said in disbelief. "The Krell swarm is abandoning Talon 4. "Confirm that," Deho demanded. Sensors showed it clearly. The swarm was consolidating at bioships it had landed on the planet, loading bioforms and preparing to depart. "It was leaving. They're running," Subin whispered. "The Krell swarm is running from us." In orbit around Talon 4, dozens of council ships watched in stunned silence. The swarm's bioships launched, fleeing the system. The hive mind had made a calculation. This planet was not worth the losses. These humans were too costly to fight. For the first time in recorded history, the Krell swarm had been driven away. Phantom Unit regrouped at their base camp, exhausted beyond measure. They had fought for nearly 40 hours straight, Ada,